Howdy, howdy, and welcome to My Bloody Judy with your final faguettes, myself, Zachary Patton Garcia.
And Ian Carlos Crawford. Today we're here to talk about Final Girls. Zach and I decided we'll do we're going to make this maybe a series where we talk about Final Girls sometimes.
I don't know what our original pitch was, but we were just going to cover all the Final Girls all at once. It was chaotic. It was a horrible idea. So this is going to be an ongoing series now. Much better idea.
Everyone was very patient with our back and forth. We're here. We have two great guests. First up, we have a recording artist who's inspired by cinema.
Bright light, bright light.
We also have returning guest. He is the horror artist,
Laz Marquez.
The horror artist.
Thank you for having me.
2 E's. Again. Put 2 E's in that one.
Yeah.
Get away from her, you bitch!
Rod, would you like to tell us why you picked Ellen Ripley?
I would love to. I'm obsessed with Ripley as a character and a cultural phenomenon. I am thrilled that a role was taken away from a cis man and given to a woman in a horror movie, especially in the period of time that it was made. I honestly can't imagine Alien being an interesting film if that was a male character. I think that it would be just so much more lacking in what it gives you as an audience. I am obsessed with Sigourney Weaver and her delivery in every single Alien movie. I am obsessed with Alien Resurrection. It is my favorite of the entire bunch, which is highly controversial, but also grow up. It's amazing.
I like it too. I do.
I think it's so iconic. I can't cope with how much I love Alien Resurrection. I love the fact that she was a final girl and then she died and she was still a final girl. Everything about it. I think the twists and turns and the history behind the character, the kind of like the power that she has, the echoing of society's relentless ignoring the truth, ignoring logic, ignoring warning signs of Mother Nature, like all of it. Everything about her character, her arc it's inspiring, it's tragic, it's empowering, it's depressing, it's everything that life should be.
There's a lot. There's going to be a lot to cover too. You just summed it up, so we're done now.
Yeah,
we're
okay.
We're good.
I did an English literature degree, so I'm good with a synopsis, I suppose.
I like to just think that you have that all written down, all up to the side on the screen, though. It is true, though. Like given to a man, this probably would have been a 1 movie character, maybe 2.
Yeah,
I think so.
It wouldn't have gotten much further than that. But we haven't even had an Alien film with Ellen Ripley in such a long time, and she's still so baked into like public consciousness, right? Like we still remember her.
I am like an Alien Resurrection apologist. Like I don't understand why it's like so hated.
No, neither do I.
The only one I don't like is the third one. Like I mean, I don't really like the new ones, but of that like series, the only one I don't. It just. And only because it's like relentlessly bleak and like like her plight, it's just you're waiting for her to die. And like, even so, it's not like terrible, right? It's not like a badly made film. It's just I don't like the story there.
I'm right there with you, Ian. I think, Alien 3, if it weren't for Sigourney Weaver and like the rest of the cast that were like so like pivotal, I think, like in their performances, it could have like really like failed, but it's all right.
And they did a really good job just rolling with the punches, because that's a movie that was like being written and put together as they were making it, right? So chaos everywhere, and I think they kind of took it in stride as much as they could take it in stride. And Sigourney Weaver, just like she is badass in that movie. Like you can watch her and just isolate it down to her performance, and it's an exciting performance to watch still.
Yeah, I feel like it's the least 3-dimensional of all of the films. What it does very well is show you how shit men are, which is very accurate. And the bleakness of that is, I think, very pinpoint. But I don't know if you need to really see that or to be told that, because you already know that. So it's kind of like unfortunate that it's like every shitty male trope from any space franchise all thrown together in one cast.
Yeah.
And then this woman has to somehow not be exhausted by them and try and not die.
After like 2 movies of like, that was kind of like
Yeah.
to a lesser extent, that was what the other movies were too. Like you said, no one.
Yes.
I was actually driving yesterday and thinking about the final girls talk you're going to have, and I was like, Ellen Ripley kind of falls into almost like Gail Weathers, where both of them are always right and no one fucking listens, and then like shit goes wrong because no one listened. And kind of that's like a very interesting character for me. But I do want you to give your I want to hear what your resurrection thoughts.
Me?
Yeah. Liz, you said that's your favorite one.
It is my favorite one. I think it's absolutely fucking iconic start to finish. Best line in any Alien movie franchise when they hold up the fork and she says, fuck. It's absolutely amazing. I love the idea of the technology to get the alien from inside a replicated human being. I think that's really cool. I love that it was showing like humans as monsters and monsters as just like trying to survive. Like I don't at any point really root for the humans during this movie. And I enjoy that. I love the fact that the people that you are rooting for are not human. They're a replicant. Yeah. They are an android and a xenomorph. And everyone else, I'm just like, fine. You know, you don't really have any redeeming features. But I love the cast of this movie. I think the cast are fantastic. The setting is amazing. Like the artistry in the creation of it is gorgeous. It's like a weird twist on the tale, and it kind of makes the story a little bit more widescreen than the other films have been, because you've got like this kind of like altered timeline of the creature. It breaks my heart when she goes into the room and she sees the different stages of herself that failed. I think that's like a really special moment in the film that I don't understand why people don't even react to that. Like, I think that's important in terms of like what science has done with like cloning even cows and sheep and stuff. Like that's a really nice reflection of society.
But it also humanizes her quite a bit, you know, because until that point, you know, like we're like what she is, right?
Yes.
So we're not sure if she's like purely a xenomorph or like what level of, you know, hybrid she is.
Yeah.
But that's when like we really get that emotional beat.
Yeah. What I also really enjoy is she filmed this during the same time as Snow White. If you've seen that, and she's basically the same character. She even does the claw wiping of the chin to both Winona Ryder and the person that plays Snow White in Snow White. I noticed that the other day, and I was like, wow, she must have been like, you know, so closely intertwined with the two sets that she just kind of carried one character into the other one, and I'm obsessed with it because they're both kind of like fantasy creatures that she gives a little Sigourney touch to, and I love it. I love the fact that you get this, you know, sort of like push and pull of whether she's a human being or not, and how she is. They kind of write her off as like this evil replicant, but she has more feeling and emotion and sort of justice, I suppose, than the humans do. And it's just, I think it's awesome. The soundtrack is amazing as well. I know that they're all really good. I have them all behind me, but I love the Alien Resurrection soundtrack. I think tonally it was the tightest and the most funny, smart, and sharp one for me. Obviously, the original is iconic in its unfolding and did something that no one really done before. But I think that for me, Alien Resurrection gives me everything I love from all of the Alien films, puts it into a blender, and just gives me like this sort of like super juice of it's delicious. I watch it all the time. I watch it like at least twice a year.
I haven't revisited in a while, but you're convincing me that because I've never hated it, but I'm like, oh, maybe I do. Maybe I will love it more.
How closely do you relate this Ripley in Resurrection to the one from the first three? Do you see them as, you know, closely connected, or are they just two completely separate beings for you?
I see them as very closely connected, I think. I mean, there's, you know, the sense of like calm, which kind of remains. There's the logic, which is like the key to Ripley's character throughout the whole thing. There's humanity. There's compassion, but it's all measured. And throughout the whole franchise, I think she was the only person that didn't like fly off the handle when something happened. There are like moments where, but it's like when a man has like pushed her to the limit of like coping with them, basically. But she's been very like steadfast and kind of like precise and very just very impressive. And I think that they kind of instilled like more of a sense of like eerie calm to her, with like the human emotions subdued somewhat. But I think it's very much the same character. Like at no point did I think that's not Ellen Ripley.
What about for the rest of you?
I was gonna say, I'm curious what you think, Les.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Have you seen the director's cut?
I have not.
So the director's cut actually has a scene that I love where like they're holding up pictures to Ripley, to get her memory moving. And they show a picture of a girl and she says nude. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was such a missed opportunity for like the final product. Because I think that, Alien 3 bothered me for a lot of reasons, but it was really like the reason of losing Hicks and Newt.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
So stupidly too. That makes me so mad. I hate a like off-screen death and like, we landed. The mummies are their bodies. I'm gonna throw them, and it's like, after all that, come on.
And
I thought it was a sweet like tone that they added within that. But overall, I think it was a little sillier than my taste. Resurrection specifically, but I think that the performers elevated it enough where it's not my least favorite.
Okay.
What is your favorite? Is it the first one?
I'm sorry?
What is your favorite? Is it the first one?
No, Aliens.
Oh, I mean,
I watch it maybe
perfect.
like 3 times per year.
It's perfect. I do like objectively understand that Aliens is a better film than Alien Resurrection. I just enjoy the camp that Alien Resurrection has as well. Like in no way would I like put up my hand and say like Alien Resurrection is the best film.
Me and Ian have this problem all the time where we have to remind ourselves to differentiate what we're talking about here. What is our favorite versus what is like technically the better one, right? The better option.
Like Alien is a perfect film. Aliens, I think, is another perfect film.
Yes.
It's just about taste. Yeah. And I was raised on like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and, like my dad making me watch that, and then like the Muppets from my mom. So I think Aliens just has like a certain texture, and I think the characters are really well evolved, even though they don't have as much screen time. But I think that's a James Cameron thing.
Yeah,
I have a question.
Bill Paxman as well.
Yeah, I will say I know I like the second one better, but I still kind of blur the first two together a little bit sometimes when I like think about them.
It is one story though. It like truly is one complete story, Well,
and like, I mean, like you said, Rod, like Resurrection does like pan out more into the world. Alien and Aliens kind of are like, they're trapped on the ship with the aliens. They've got to kill them. And like, I mean, that sounds like I'm belittling the movies because they're great, but like, that is the plot, right? And like Resurrection definitely, even the third one tries to do something different because they're like in that jail. And like, that's at least like a different setting. So yeah, I was like, which one is Paul Reiser in? It's the first one, right?
Second one, yeah.
Okay.
Bill Paxman is in the second one.
Okay.
And he's just like hot as hell. So that's really
Bill Paxton, man. Sorry, he was, wasn't he? He was a good looker. He's easy on the eyes.
Hot.
Let's go back a little bit. I do want to kind of bring it back to Ellen's sort of Ripley's beginning with the first movie, right? Okay, she is this mother who is just working to take care of her kid, right? She's out on this mission, and that's her whole storyline right there. And I guess we can kind of include Aliens in this, since we were talking that it's just one complete story. This is where I kind of have a problem with Ellen. And I think I see Ellen Ripley sort of like Ian sees Laurie Strode, in that they keep putting her through the ringer. She, reaches a resolution and she wakes up and she's back in it. And it's every movie that happens every single time, and it seems like she's always in this hellscape cycle. Also, all of her storylines are kind of about motherhood. I wonder where you guys fall on that. Do you have a problem with any of that, or because with the first one, right? The first one is she's taking care of her kid. She's out, she's working to take care of her kid, and she, this horrible thing happens to her, and she loses her kid in that process, right? So in the second one, she kind of gains daughter again. She gains a family, and then
Right.
the third one, she loses her kid again, and then she's forcefully impregnated by another alien, right? And that whole storyline. And then the fourth one, she's a mother again, right? So it's this constant cycle that she never really gets out of.
Let's go for the chooser of Ellen Ripley.
Okay.
Rod, explain yourself.
Yeah, I don't really have a problem with it because I do feel like it is something that takes her out of that sort of stagnant, sterile world into the real world, and it shows her as like a person with compassion and vision beyond the immediate surroundings. When comparing her to Laurie Strode, I find it interesting because Laurie Strode thinks that everything is about her, whereas Ripley knows that it is not. So I feel like the
comparison really is just relating to Ian's dislike of them. They keep bringing her back to put her through something and not really giving her a solid resolution.
Yes, I believe that's called building a franchise, but
just that's fair. That's
fair. No,
okay.
I mean, I see the point. Like, it is that kind of like, recurrent cycle and hellscape and stuff. But I do enjoy the fact that you get to see this woman surviving, thriving, and not being distracted by the process of motherhood or the nurturing nature that she has. Okay. It's not like she fails because she also has maternal instinct. She actually survives because of that, or in tandem with that. And I feel like that injection of humanity is kind of nice in what is otherwise, action tropes surviving in some kind of like a Terminator kind of world. Yeah. Like, they do allow her to be a human and a hero at the same time. And I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But I understand why that might bother you somewhat for the franchise. I've never really thought of it like that, to be honest, because I've never really noticed it as something I thought was a hindrance in the storyline. I thought it was actually quite...
I don't even know if I think it's a hindrance, right? I don't know this story well enough to like consider it a hindrance. I think my dislike with not even the motherhood aspect of it, but with her just kind of constantly being put through the ringer. Is there a success story from movie to movie? Like, she seems to go to sleep at the end of every movie in some shape or form. And in the next movie, is any of that success from the previous movie carried over into this new movie? Or is her, I like that you said she was kind of a tragic character at the beginning of, when you were kind of introducing her. And I think that's kind of perfect because all of the successes and all of the things she accomplishes, I don't know if I see those, show up in any further movie. Like the next time she's showing up, it's so much time later and she kind of like has lost everything again. And in that way, it is completely tragic.
It is. Well, the shitty men are dead still, which is really nice.
There you go.
There's usually, I don't think that the franchise sets out to show any positivity, to be honest, and I don't expect it from it. So I don't really expect success. We're going to talk about Nancy. I don't expect a positive resolution at the end of Nightmare on Elm Street because at the end of the first one, you're even kind of told in the last few seconds that they haven't got a happy ending. So I never expected a space set sci-fi to have like a positive resolution. Like, her world is not one that's positive. Like, human race is at a situation where they've sent people out into space to mine planets because the world is failing and like Earth is called like a shithole. Yeah. So at no point in any of that setup do I expect anything like lovely to happen and then carry through to the next film. Like, I don't think I ever even considered that as an option. So it didn't bother me that it was like a hellscape. It's like, oh, and now it's another terrible place. Oh, and another terrible place. Like, it might have been because I used to play video games as a kid and like, at the end of a level of Super Mario, I don't think that the next level is going to be a pleasant walk. I'm expecting to still be attacked by things and them trying to kill me. So my brain is like, oh, well, what is going to happen next to her? And like, what is the next layer of quagmire that she's going to have to try and walk through? And it's like, just the fact that people haven't cared about what's happened in the last one, I think is actually more interesting to follow through as a plot conceit than like something good happened and she retained some of the happiness. It's like,
well, it is kind of like that as an audience too, right? What we are waking up with her, and we're like a whole new audience for her to play out her story. So, but it is a dark series, right? So I guess you shouldn't expect any bright spots in space.
I also feel like it's her going through like different levels of grief.
Okay, you know? I want to hear more about that. I like that.
Now, in the first Alien, she's, dealing with a traumatizing situation. She survives. Then, in the second one, she learns, her daughter died, 53 years, near to 53 years ago while she was gone. And then, the third one, she's dealing with just being away from people. Everyone has been extracted from her life. And then the fourth one, she's reborn, so to speak. So it's like, I think she's a seminal. I don't even want to call her a final girl because, she's died quite a bit in many ways, emotionally and physically. But, she's a tough character that I think represents a lot, including motherhood, which is very close to my heart, having lost my mom. I think there's something really powerful about that element of her. She's very motherly, throughout the series. So I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think that the nicest moment of her motherhood is the moment with her and her alien child at the end of Alien Resurrection. And Sigourney's performance as she watches the alien be sucked out of the window. Yeah. I really found that like very harrowing. Like I went to see this movie in the cinema when I was like 14. I was like completely underage, and we snuck in on like a school afternoon and watched it in this giant cinema, like 300 seats or something, and there were 5 of us in there. So I had this really magical connection to like watching it underage on this big screen, and seeing that moment. And as a 14-year-old boy, like really just being very moved by that moment with the alien. It was really like watching a woman have a genuine horror moment. I mean, like Newt, yes, but like this, you don't expect it. And to have that motherhood moment there, I thought was a really like incredible moment in her character's journey. I really loved that. I also was hesitant to bring her up as a final girl because I don't really consider her a final girl either.
I would say she is. I would go with
I would say yes.
I think so. Laz, you put her on your final girls poster.
I know, but I think she's a badass. That's my like deep down like feeling. I included her because it's Ripley, but like she's a badass. She's not somebody who needs to necessarily like survive the circumstances. She's willing to do whatever she can. And sure, there may be some qualities with our other final girls.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I keep her in like a special place.
Yeah.
Well, true. I mean, she is willing to die. She's willing to die multiple times. She's like, nuke the planet. Let's end our chance of survival just for the sake of humanity. Like that's definitely not final girl trope. Like that's
I mean,
beyond.
that resilience though is so. I think it's the resilience that I associate with her in Final Girls, right? It's because she doesn't really ever have a choice, like from one on to anything that is really happening to her until she's in the situation and how she can handle the situation, right?
Right.
That is very Final Girl. That is like extremely Final Girl to me. That is like one of the hallmarks of Final Girl. So are we split? Are we two and two?
What's funny is
split.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'm glad, Zach, that you mentioned that because when Laz, you said that, I was like, I thought Laz put her in his final. I guess he did.
I'm looking at her.
I really was like, I misremember that poster.
Well, we're just adding people. Add Helen Shivers to that one, and I'll buy a new copy.
I've done plenty of her.
I definitely do consider her a final girl. I feel like the fact that because she like, when she dies, it's like not saving anyone because they're all dead, but like getting rid of the bad guys when she dies in the third one. So I'm like, all right, everyone's dead. So like, all right, I can still consider that like, and at the time it was going to be the last one. And like we all know, well, Laz and Zach know I fucking hate I don't like bring back a final girl to kill her. That's like my least favorite thing. Because I feel like if they survive, let them live. Just
well,
I'd
so
rather
this is
them
what
not
I'm
go.
curious about is like you didn't kind of answer is like how do you take that? Her just being put through the ringer from movie to movie. How do you take that?
Well, I mean, like, I think the first, like, I again, for me, it's like the first two, like you said, are a story. And then I think Resurrection is a good way of bringing her back without having to like, because I do agree with you. I do agree with both of you. Like, it is the same, like, for me, it very much still is the same character, but technically it's a different, you know what I mean? It's like a different body.
And it makes sci-fi sense too, right? It's not
Yeah.
a reboot. They didn't have to reboot to bring Ellen Ripley back, you know?
Right. And I think they like the transition. Like, I think it, like you said, it makes sci-fi sense. Of course, in real world, it doesn't make sense, but like that works for me as a beat. And so like, I can like compartmentalize that as almost a different, like, it's like a different era. It's like in the future's future. And I'm okay with that. And because 1 and 2, it's like, while she is put through the ringer, she fucking picks it up when she needs to. And like, puts on the power loader suit and says, "Get away from her, you bitch." And it's like iconic. I just like, that's like such a iconic moment for me is like her in that power loader suit. And like, I mean, for most people, right? Like, even if you're not a horror fan, even if you're not a sci-fi fan, like, you know, that moment. Like when I was a teen, me and my friends would like jokingly quote that line.
Also make like a applause for Sigourney Weaver getting an actress nomination for that.
She is very good.
Role.
Wait, did she get nominated?
For what? For Academy?
Oh,
we lost him.
Shit, we lost Laz.
We pissed him off and he's gone. He's gone.
Oh no.
I don't know. Could you see anybody else playing that role? I know like it's the cliched thing to say, no, nobody else could play that role, but like, would it have worked with anybody else? You know,
No.
She has such a specific look and such an almost androgynous look too, right? That kind of calls back to them switching the character from a man to a woman.
Yeah.
You know,
I think like she has such a presence doing that character, and she makes me care about the storyline. Like, I hated Prometheus. Hate Prometheus with such
I love
passion.
it so much.
Flames on the side of my face. I fucking hate Prometheus so much.
So bad. Everything looks cute, but like it's terrible.
It's so fucking boring, and the lead actress is so
No,
bad.
I won't take this. Shaw is a great character.
Like, in what way?
No,
every way.
No, we're
not talking about Shaw right now, though. We're talking about Sigourney Weaver in Prayers for Bobby, or whatever movie we're talking about today. I can't have the Shaw conversation right now. I want to like people, okay? I want to like have a nice night, a nice quiet evening.
I was thinking what you said earlier, like if they had been a man, it would have been so dull, right? It would have felt like, all right, I've seen this movie before. It wouldn't have been as like great. And like a man rallying against other men who aren't believing him isn't as interesting as like one of only 2 women on the whole fucking ship, and they're not believing the one woman who is correct. That's just more compelling. I remember, so Alien and Aliens are my father's favorite movies, so we had to watch them a lot as a kid. They were always playing. My mom would be like, "He's watching Alien again." And I remember once, like, you know, as like a teenager thinking I was like, "Ooh, I got it." I was like, you know, the thing I like about her in Alien is that they like gender swapped it, and like she's not like super sexy and like is still the hero. And I remember my dad saying, "I beg to differ that she's not super sexy."
There you go.
And I was like, all right, well, fair. Okay. But like, I mean, but then there is the scene where she's in like her panties and like a crop top tee. So
very
like,
small panties, the smallest panties I've ever seen.
Yeah.
You know,
that role was originally designated for a male role.
Yeah.
So a man could have been wearing those little itty bitty panties.
He could have.
That's the shame of the franchise, isn't it?
It is. It is. We were cheated out of that one.
We were.
Bill Paxton in those panties.
I know.
And I
God
just think they're like, it's Sigourney Weaver. I mean, a lot of these characters, especially in horror, it's like the movie, sometimes it's like, you know, the simple idea of like aliens on a ship. That's not really, you know, the craziest idea. And it works because of Sigourney Weaver's portrayal. It's like a combination of everything, like the writing, her acting. And I think a lot of like horror movies that we discuss, that's what works, right? It's like, okay, it can be your basic, there's a monster. That's it. But like it's the writing and the acting and like the perfect storm of everything coming together really well.
Yeah.
You know, like Zach and I have talked for certain other horror movies. Like sometimes it's like, we love this scene, but like the movie's okay.
Yeah.
But
that
like
happens a lot, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Like we discussed, I Know What You Did Last Summer. I don't hate that movie, but it's not like my favorite horror movie, but like the Sam Rochelle chase scene is like a fucking
it's so good. Yeah.
Right.
It's so
yeah.
good.
And it's like impossible to say like,
yes,
that it, I can't imagine someone saying it's not good, first of all, but like that is like the best moment of the movie. And it is like top tier and great. And I think it's a lot of credit to Sarah Michelle Gellar's acting. And like horror movies, like people like underestimate the acting that goes into it, right? You know, Nev Campbell is Sidney Prescott, fucking Courtney Cox is Gail Weathers. Like you remember these characters, so they invest in them. And I do think Sigourney Weaver like brought it for Ripley.
Well, that's interesting then. Okay, let's kind of go there. Is horror movie acting, especially with Final Girls, is very specific, and they tend to go through the same range of motions. Ripley's very like. She is very focused a lot. I can't recall off the top of my head. Does she have a moment where she is crying scared, or is she always just bossed up?
No,
A few moments where she kind of loses her cool, but it's usually in reaction to something that a human has done. I think it doesn't tend to be screaming about the alien. Like there are a few moments of like shock or jumping back or whatever in the first one, but most of her like out of control reactions because like one of the men has pushed it too far and like not believing her or when she loses Newt, I suppose. But I feel like she's pretty like composed given what she's going through. That does
set her apart from everybody else, right? Because
it
is just, I think, and again, that's Sigourney Weaver. It's just like we remember Sigourney. I would totally trust Sigourney Weaver coming in and saving my life, right? Like absolutely.
Totally.
So this is a gay podcast. We are gays. We love talking about a Final Girl look. What is your favorite Ellen Ripley look? Everybody, there's the whole room. And why? You have to have a why also.
Okay, I have an answer. It's her look in the second one. The outfit she's wearing when she's in the power loader. I love the like, they're not quite suspenders because those pants are so high, but I guess they're suspenders, and like the like baggy-ish jeans with those really cool sneakers that I think Nike or someone did sell for
Reebok.
Like, Reebok. Yeah, I like did want them, but they're very expensive.
Laz says I have them. I have them.
I wouldn't be surprised. Like I do think that is a very iconic look, and like even like add Newt, like her whole Newt and the gun, like add that to the outfit, and that like. You know, I'm looking.
Are you making Newt an accessory? She's a child. She's a little girl.
Listen, I was friends with a drag queen who did Ripley drag for Halloween one year, and like had a doll attached to her side that was Newt.
I'll make this easy and agree with Ian as usual.
That's good. With Newt as the accessory, are you saying that too?
All of it.
Okay.
I love the crazy perm. I love, her with Newt. I love her look throughout the entire film. It's a jumpsuit though. It's not leather pants.
Ian.
Okay.
I think
that's what I'm here for.
Mine is maybe Alien Resurrection in the chamber with Winona Ryder with a dagger through her hand and that like 80s perm.
Yeah.
I think is like amazing. Like
I appreciate that you included the dagger.
Yeah, it's like a red bodysuit or something, isn't it? I think, which is like a little bit.
I can't even remember. I thought she wore the brown one.
I'm having a hard time remembering too.
Whatever she's wearing,
yes.
Like the composition of that look, I think, is like really really cool because it's very like sleek, and she does like she's dressed like an alien. I think.
Yeah.
It's like
it's very H.R. Geiger.
Very H.R. Geiger
design.
And I really just enjoy like the silhouette that she has there, and then with like the knife through the hand as well. I think is like so cool.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna bounce off of that. I think the slick look works really well for her. And I always, anytime I think Ellen Ripley, I think of her really wet hair throughout that entire movie, the entirety of Alien Resurrection, and it just works for me, right? I also think it helps. It's probably a nostalgic tie for me, is that was one of the first Alien movies I probably watched. It's one of the first ones in my memory, so I just like have that Ellen Ripley always in my head.
It's funny because the thing I think of with that movie is the thing I have in my head is Winona Ryder's like purple jumpsuit. I think of that a lot because it's like so bright, and like I love Winona Ryder. I love Winona Ryder.
Such a specific Winona Ryder time period that she looks like she had just come off of Girl Interrupted, right? She even stood like Girl Interrupted, holding her jacket real closed and her little bangs going over here.
I was so excited to have of course, me. I loved Winona Ryder as a teen, and I was excited to have her in like a very sci-fi. Favorite Ripley moment, Laz?
Ooh, oh man, I would say, I think her cuddling up to Newt under the the science sector of LV-426.
Oh my God, you remembering that off the top of your head?
I know. Very specifically too. Okay. I'm very impressed that you're picking these quieter moments for these girls.
Yeah.
I'm impressed by that.
I like those like deeper moments. I could have said, get away from her, you bitch, but like whatever.
Ian's
like we've heard that a million times. But like her cuddling up and, like, I don't know, making Newt feel, safe for a little bit. I thought that was cute.
That's fair. Rod?
Alien Resurrection, where they're about to leave the ship and she pauses and she falls through the grate into the sea of aliens. I actually wrote a song about that moment in the film. Oh. I write lots of songs based on movies, and my last but one record, I wrote it all based on my favorite scenes from movies. So I have this song called Kiss for Kiss, which is about like really like dangerous sensuality. And it's about the moment where you see like the lights go up and lights go down, up and down, and then it zooms in with her writhing around in the sea of aliens. And it's like a womb, and it's like a kind of parental interplay, and like it's dangerous, but it's really gorgeous and it's gentle and really intense. And I think that moment is just so incredible. Like there's no danger in terms of them. There's a perceived danger because you're like, oh, she's in the sea of aliens. They're obviously going to try and kill her and attack her. And they're just like swaddling her and like embracing her and like a sea washing over her. I think it's gorgeous. I think it's like the most stunning image. And I watched that little section over and over. I think it's incredible.
Zach, what's
that you made a song about that.
I know, I love that.
I'm so weird.
I wrote it down. I'm gonna go listen to it. Your favorite moment, Ian, has to be "Get away from her, you bitch." It has to be,
of course,
right?
Of course it is.
Of course it is. So we're moving on.
Iconic.
I'm gonna do a moment just before that, right, where she is just. I love her trying to get out of the station. The ship is down. The alien queen is like. I always remember just feeling so thrilled by that moment, and so I think I'll go with that one.
Booby traps and improvised anti-personnel devices? Well, what are you reading that for?
I'm into survival.
Laz, why did you pick Nancy Thompson?
Well, Nancy Thompson, I think, is out of the traditional final girls, which I exclude Ripley from, like I mentioned earlier. I think she's kind of more of like a action hero badass. I think with Nancy Thompson, she was the first real character that, like took the stakes into her own hands and like really fought back and tried to save her friends. And again, she's in multiple films, and I guess we'll get to that. But at least in that first film, she wasn't putting up with that bullshit. She was ready to fight, and she was ready to figure it out and hopefully save her friends. Whether she was successful or not, that's a different story.
And she also, we're talking about Ripley, people not believing, like people, like she knew, she kind of like, not knew, but was like willing to look into what was going on while everyone else was just like, oh, this person died. And like, she was smarter and more like, almost like a little bit Gail, a little bit Ripley, where she's like, well, I'm going to figure this shit out. And like you said, she took it upon herself. And I do think that is, especially back then, we didn't get a lot of final girls like that.
No, and she was rather proactive. Yes. I know I'm going to offend Zach here, but when we look at someone like Laurie Strode, who effectively runs away and tries to find simplistic ways out. Yeah. Nancy is there playing like Home Alone before that was even a thing, and like
Well, and I think that's what I do really appreciate about Nancy is that we have the mark of a really good final girl is when they're not just doing nothing and being saved, right, and make it out at the end, and their hero dies. It's when they're doing something, when they're actively trying to save their own life. Nancy is a level and a step up from that because she's actively trying to save the lives of the people around her, right? And I love thinking of Nancy as like the town legend. People drive by the house, and that's the house where the girl went crazy, and they put bars on the windows, and she was screaming out of the windows, right? It just, for me, that brings it a little bit more into reality. And I always like to like bring something into reality, a little bit of reality to everything. And I just really appreciate her proactiveness. I think you said it a couple of times. It's just, she had a plan, she didn't take long to come up with a plan too. She was tying sledgehammers to the ceiling, and, like she was going for it.
Well, one of my favorite scenes is with her and Johnny Depp on the bridge.
Yeah.
Where he's eating the, burger, and she's reading the handbook for like survival. And, he's like, what are you reading? And she's like, oh, I'm into survival. Like, I think that's a great, lesson to, prove to not only young girls, but also young gay men and, men who are sensitive. So I think that she has also a lot of connectivity to like homosexual people.
Yeah.
Where like there's, like this, like fighting against, this presence and trying to gain your own, I don't know, like a uniqueness and strength.
Well, yeah, and I think final girls in general, kind of like a lot of like gay men can relate. The reason gay men like final girls, because it's like, oh, they're underestimated. Oh, it's like, oh, they're feminine, so like they can't do it. They're a woman, and like shit like that. That like the characters around them usually kind of look at them as. And I do think that's why a lot of like gay men like relate to horror movies and final girls in general. But yeah, I will say like, for me, that's very Ripley and Nancy both have like the very important keystones of final girls for me, which is like, they're not just slip sliding around and they survive because they were the last one who like hid the longest. It's like, they're like, fuck this. I'm going to like kill this motherfucker. And they do the thing. Yeah. Granted, they eventually die, but like in their movies, they like do the thing they're setting out to do. And I think it's worth noting that both of them kind of had a rebirth, like came back after dying in like pretty smart ways.
Yeah.
Like
different ways, but like smart ways.
Ways that made sense also for like the franchise. Like New Nightmare is we talked about New Nightmare last.
So good.
Like, I love that movie, and it's, for me, it was the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie that like I loved, because I thought it was like when it came out, it was pretty like a wild notion, right? Like, and just the idea that it was like, oh, that's the actor that played her playing herself, but it's like not, it's like a version of herself that she's like, I thought that was like the coolest fucking idea.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, that's pretty cool that like she's spanned that long and they were able to bring her back without like getting rid of what came before. It was like, they just like did something different. Right.
Yeah. And I think the other interesting aspect about that character of Nancy is like, we forget that, like Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one was 1984. And then, like 1994 was New Nightmare. So
it wasn't
only
that
like
much.
a 10-minute.
That
10
feels
year,
like a 20-year
difference.
a 20-year comeback,
really does,
right?
yeah.
But it's only 10 years. And we also like don't discuss enough that she was only in Heather Langenkamp was only in 3 installments of this franchise and is I think the disrespected face of this franchise, but she is a face of this franchise, right?
Yeah.
I think she's honored that role very well. She's been very kind to our community.
Yeah.
The homosexual LGBTQ plus community. I think that she's a very lovely woman.
Do you think, Laz, that Nancy's overall journey throughout the franchise helps or hurts her character?
I don't know. Like, as I grow older, I think that it changes a little bit. I know I was devastated with Nightmare on Elm Street 3 when we saw her passing. Yeah. Again, spoiler alert. So, like, I remember back then, like, we had trading cards, like horror trading cards.
Oh my God, do they have ones for Nightmare on Elm? They really did put them out for everything, didn't they?
They had, they had ones where you would get them through like the, whatever, like the slot machines or whatever. And
we're all showing our age now.
yeah, I know. Womp womp. But yeah, like there was something like really, sad about her death because, you've seen this character survive so much and then become a mentor. So I guess we're leading into Nightmare 3, where I thought that, I would have liked a little bit more from her in that sequel, but I think it's probably one of the best films in the franchise.
I'm surprised, Laz, that I was going to ask you where it would rank, but the third one is your favorite? Yeah,
it's typically the film that I watch the most.
All right.
I think that it has captivating characters. I love Patricia Arquette.
Yeah. She is really good. Yeah.
Yeah.
She can do that damn commercial, but she wouldn't do 4, right? It's like
well, there's a lot of differing notions if you've watched Never Sleep Again.
Yeah.
I love her. I think she's amazing. I think she's a very, very satisfying horror character, let alone just a final girl. It's, there are so many layers to the character where it's like she's not an obvious hero. She's somebody that you would like feasibly want to be in real life, and also happens to be like a good person and really kick ass and really resourceful and intuitive. And I think the fact that I like both her and Ripley comes from them being that character that is just like perpetually ignored. Nobody believes their plight. More feasible that they wouldn't believe Nancy because it is so fantastical. Whereas like Ripley, there's proof of what she's seen, but there isn't really proof of what Nancy is dealing with. So it's like the psychological and the physical torment that she's going through. I love her character in the first film. I love the third film as well, most in the franchise. I think like that storyline is just it's so crushing. Come on, baby, come on.
And she really is. We don't talk enough about that. She was so young. Like her character is so young to be mentoring and doing what she's doing in
she's meant
the
to be
third movie that I always forget that she's not a 30-year-old.
They physically dressed her up and did her wardrobe.
They gave her the straightest shoulders that you could, right?
Yeah. But I agree. There's a quality with her, I think, because we also have to think about like her background, right? Like she's come, she's in the early 80s. She comes from like a broken family, like divorced parents. And, like she doesn't have her dad there. Like her mom's a drunk. So it's like she doesn't have anything to rely on.
Yeah.
So like she's on her own.
And even her boyfriend dies in that first one.
Oh yeah.
Very with Alien, where like the alien is with Ellen, sorry, where the alien is on the ship. Like for Nancy, the demon is in her house.
Yeah.
You know, he was like buried in her basement or cremated in her basement. So like both of these characters, it's funny that they're in the same podcast.
I was just thinking
but
that,
like
yeah.
the monsters are like the calls coming from within the house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like the fact that Nancy has been like thrust into this position by what her parents did, is like even more horrifying, really, that she has to survive like the legacy of what her parents did, plus his legacy as well. It's like a sort of twofold attack, you know?
And when you put it like that too, like that makes it, that gives that tragedy too, because her life ended really, really, she had a short life, and it was because of somebody else's doing, right? Like it was, she was having to live this legacy problem.
I would jump in to support, you know, because again, as I get older, I love A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors.
Yeah.
Even though they killed my favorite character, because of the fact that, you know, it was her in essence protecting these young teens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now she went in, she told them right before, she's like, if you go into this dream, you're going to die. Like,
yeah,
you know, there's no like taking things back. So, you know, they go in and she sacrifices herself for Kristen. And even that moment of just like Kristen being like, I'm going to wish you into a beautiful dream, and like holding her and cradling her, like, oh.
Yeah.
Fun note is that Wes Craven was inspired to create Nancy based on his daughter. Because his daughter was like, well, like, why are all these like girls like so stupid and like horror films, and you know, like, why can't they be the heroes? And he modeled Nancy off of his daughter.
I didn't know that. I love that.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Cute.
Yeah.
I feel like Nancy has been getting recognized more lately, but I do feel like, Zach, you're kind of right. She's like underrated. Like for a while, she went very like, she wouldn't be brought up in conversations a lot. But for me, she's one of the like major, and clearly I know for you, Laz, like one of the like top tier final girls. I will say I fucking hate her death in the third one. It still pisses me off. But I do think like her character is pretty great. And like you all were saying, like it is important to remember, like, you know, she is helping. Like, and I think a reason 3 also does well with you and I, Laz, is because we're also big like comic nerds, and it's like basically an X-Men horror movie.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, it like that film has so much texture and like such great character work that I think it just like helps you along. Again, I'm not happy about Nancy dying. I think luckily we got her back in New Nightmare.
Yeah.
So luckily that saved, I think, the character a little bit. But yeah, like Nightmare 3 to me is like a chef's kiss of horror.
It did invest more in characters than, especially at the time, horror movies were doing with anyone but the like main character.
Yep.
I'm sure there are also conversation, or at least there had to have been recently, right, with Laurie Strode and Sidney Prescott both coming back, that they could, you know, maybe bring her back. Would that be something you'd be open to, or do you think that they just wrapped up her story pretty nicely? And because they'd have to do some flips to figure out how that character's coming back, right? It's either a retcon or it's a dream space thing.
I wasn't a huge fan of Halloween Kills.
That's fair.
So I would have to see where that goes in terms of like resurrecting these franchises. I don't know. Like, I don't know that Nancy needs any more than she's been given.
Yeah.
I think that Heather Langenkamp is doing a really great job of carrying the character, you know, through conventions and, you know, what her activism is, and, you know, working in prosthetic work. So I don't know.
Yeah. What do you think, Rod?
I think that the kindness of Nancy's departure from the franchise is that she never was part of a terrible installation in that franchise. She got to do 3. I love New Nightmare. She got to do 3 really solid installments in that franchise. She got to preserve the legacy of that character, I think. And she also got an exit from the franchise, which made people root for her even more, which is rare for people in a franchise that long. So, whilst I love all of the Alien films, Alien 3 is my least favorite of the 4. And she never had to do the equivalent of an Alien 3,
Yeah.
So I love Nancy's character. I love the actor's portrayal throughout. And I think that there's something to be really proud of, and really it's a joy to rewatch those films.
Yeah.
So for me, that character has a win through the franchise,
Okay.
And does everything in keeping with the character, and then you can see that her personality outside of the films also shine. That's quite rare that somebody in a horror franchise gets to have that in and out of the films, and people are like, "Oh, you're awesome on and off camera."
Yeah.
That's really a golden situation for her to be in, I think.
I think also, between the two characters, an interesting through line is that, they start off young, but they become mothers very quickly, progressively through the series.
Yeah.
There's a lot of similarities as we're talking about them. They're
I know, yeah.
down to the fluffy hair. They both got fluffy hair.
It's
nice, they've got that big hair perm going on.
Yeah,
for sure.
The selflessness, the protection instinct, the survival instinct, the survival acumen, all of that is really cool to have, in 2 franchises which by all means are ridiculous, that have real wonderful human qualities, and you get to really root for these 2 characters and really what's the opposite of root, vie against or unroot for everybody else in the franchise, basically, because you're what are you doing? If there's one person can get it right, you're so exhausted by these people just not listening to them and not believing them and not helping them at all. They've got no option but just to make it all happen for themselves.
Yeah.
And also both franchises have a really loved villain. I love Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
As for, not obviously what his backstory is, but the performance of the camp and everything about it. I love that. I love the aliens. I love the brutality and the gorgeousness, and they're very camp as well, slithering around with their tails, mincing through the shadows. There's the villains that these women have to deal with are quite delicious in their own right. And then these characters are so strong and so lovable and so inspirational, against a lot of the male leads that you had in these franchises throughout. I don't really care about Arnie in Predator, for example, whilst I love that film, but I really do care about Ripley in Alien, and I don't care about Laurie Strode, really. And I don't
what am I
care.
doing here?
Oh,
I just
no.
am gone. This is too much for me.
I'm so sorry. I don't dislike her at all, but I don't I'm not
support you,
invested in
Rod.
her.
Ugh,
I'm not invested in her as I don't find her a singular story.
Yeah.
It's whereas I do find Nancy a much more singular story because of how innovative and unusually adaptive she was as a character. Laurie, Halloween is amazing. Laurie's character is the way she behaves is amazing, but it's not out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
Whereas Nancy's character is very out of the ordinary, like Ripley, I think, and they kind of stand for me above the others in terms of the leading female characters, which just do something really cool and different,
Yeah. And I think Laurie Strode was
they
just
go above and beyond.
Yeah.
They're proactive and they find solutions to impossible situations.
Yeah.
Laz, you first. What's your favorite Nancy moment?
Ooh.
I know I didn't prep you for that, so I feel like you're going through every scene.
So rude. I'm gonna go with my favorite, her on the bridge. I'm into survival.
Okay, there you go.
Like, I think that's like a good life lesson for anyone.
Laz, I kind of love that, like, that small moment is your favorite. Like, I think that's like very endearing that like of your favorite character, that's your favorite moment for her.
You know, like sure, she can crash a coffee pot on Freddie's head or, you know, like do whatever. But I think that moment expresses what she really stands for.
That's fair. That's fair. Rod, what would be your favorite Nancy moment?
Tongue through the phone. I think it's one of the best images. I know it's on your shirt there. I think it's one of the best images that I've ever seen in a horror movie. It's so camp and disgusting. Like, it's so putrid. And her reaction to it is just amazing. Like, everything about that little tiny section of the film, I think is perfect. I love it.
I would also agree.
What about you, Ian?
I think for me, it's her, like Laz said, when in Dream Warriors, when she tells them that, like, they will die if they do this, but like she's gonna do it, and she's not like judging, she's like preparing them. I love that shit. And it goes back to, like, it feels so X-Men to me, like, and I love the X-Men, and it's like she's like Professor Xavier and like a better version of Professor Xavier. Like,
she's not expecting them to do it.
Right. Yeah. Just
kind of
saying.
Presenting it like, okay, if you want to, these are the costs.
Right.
Come on. If you want to. If
You're
not,
gonna die anyway. You're just gonna die anyway. So you're gonna die.
Not all of them do.
But if they hadn't
Like,
gone in there, they probably would have, wouldn't they?
She's like Professor Xavier in a rogue wig. I think.
Yes, the best wig.
I do love the hair.
What about you? What about you, Zachary?
And see, it's hard, right? Because are we including that New Nightmare? Because that's not Nancy, you know, like she has to play Nancy at some time.
It is.
I'll go with, then if we're going to include that, I'm going to say, no, I still think the ending, just the whole ending of the first one, I think. I just like the image of, and the legend of the crazy girl who's busting windows in her house and people hear her screaming and stuff like that. I just like that. And, you know, what's going on inside the house, we know, but everybody else to the outside, you know, it just looks wild. Everything with Nancy always looks wild. Everything with Nancy looks wild from the outsider looking in, right? Okay, final question for Nancy. Favorite Nancy look?
Oh, I'm not going to go first this time.
All right, I'll go first.
Yeah.
I know you were making fun of it, Zach. I love her like blazer 80s, like business lady, even though it's early 90s. I love that look.
I never liked a shoulder pad. I'll never fall into that one.
It's like you are correct. A shoulder pad.
Broad shoulders. Is that why?
I can't even make them go as wide as they would. Yeah.
I just think it looks good on her. I think she looks like, I know it's very dated, but I like the blazer, like her like business lady like attire, even though, like we said, it's like she's only supposed to be like 20.
I know, they aged her. They did her dirty.
Which one? The gray? The gray?
The gray with the, like, is it like purple or pink? She's wearing like a little I like the gray blazer. It's cute. I think she looks good. Her big hair is fantastic. She's got great hair. I mean, her hair looks good in every look.
Every movie. The hair is the star of the show. I do. Yes. I think for my pick, I'm going to do the end of New Nightmare. That whole look with the, like, it's like a denim top, right? And then she's got the sleeves pulled up, and she's got a bandage right there, and the hair's wild, and a gray streak in it. I think it's a great final girl look.
Rod, what's your favorite Nancy look?
Her bubble bath gown. When just as the claw is about to come and greet her, I just think like it's such an iconic moment that, like, whenever I think of her, I think of like that scene in the bath. Like that's what I think of. I can't remember any of her other outfits. I remember the hair, the wigs, the weaves, everything, but the bubble bath or like the bathtub moment is my favorite moment of hers.
Les,
you and I always tend to agree.
We do. I wasn't sure if we'd be divided on this.
In the pink sweater with the blazer, she takes it off later.
It looks cute, right?
And I like her hair in it. I think she looks gorgeous in New Nightmare. So I'll give Zach a
she does
nod there. I think she looks beautiful, but I do like the 80s, shoulder
I
pad.
think we'll close it out here. Thank you guys both for bringing your favorite final girl and Ripley.
Even though Zach and I consider her a final girl.
Even though it's on the damn final girls poster. Laz, I don't understand this. I just don't get
False
it.
advertising, Laz.
Just keeping
I'm
you on your
not
toes.
saying
Zach.
she's not a final girl.
Okay,
I'm
so
saying
just change it on your website. Final girls poster plus Ripley. Okay, that's all you got to do.
no, I
Final
think
girls
she's
and
the final
family.
girl, but she's in a different league.
There you go. The different.
Is
She's
it like-
not
it's
even
like
in this
final-
galaxy.
some
She's,
on there that I don't necessarily agree with.
it's okay. All right.
Like
But,
final
you know,
comment
art for
girl.
art's sake.
Yeah,
I'm gonna cut Nancy out of that poster just for you, Naz. Just for you, Laz. There's been a lot of Laurie Strode slander going on in this
It
chat.
makes me cringe
And
every time I get
know.
upset. I'm like,
done.
I
done.
gave your girl a prominent space.
You
Thank
did, and you did, and I will forever be grateful for that. And that's a really good illustration as well. So we're gonna close it out here.
Just to set
yeah.
your mind at ease. I have no ill feeling towards Laurie Strode at all.
She's the messiest final girl that has ever been portrayed.
That's an award in itself,
They have
It's
thrown
like,
her in the dumpster, pulled her out, and thrown her back in countless times. So I get it. I think the messiness is what intrigues me so
Fundamental.
much. Yes. Thank you both so much for being here. Where can everybody find you guys?
Yeah, Laz, where can everyone find you?
You can find me at www.lazmarquez.com. Again, I'm an illustrator and a creative director in the advertising space. So, yeah.
And he also did our iconic podcast image, and we had complimented on it a lot, Laz, and you did so
Yes,
fucking good.
fantastic
You guys are
work.
pretty sweet.
your
Rod, where
artwork is fantastic.
it is, right? I love that you knew Laz's art.
Yeah.
Whenever I post your stuff, everyone's always like, "Oh my god."
It's iconic.
Rod, where can everyone find you?
You can find me at your local bagel store. No, it's brightlightx2.com, and brightlightx2 is my social media handle for everything. So, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all that kind of stuff. Spotify. There's plenty of albums out there, including the song written about Alien Resurrection, which shows how unhinged my writing process is. Yeah, I'm very active online, so please do say hi. I like to post about horror movies that I watch as well. So if you at all care about horror movies, or very specifically horror movie soundtracks, which is my very niche concern in life, I post about those an awful lot. So yeah,
I love that.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too.
Do chat to me.
All
Yeah,
right.
favorite I could listen tonight.
Yes, if you stream Death Walks at Midnight, is by Gianni Ferrio. Is one of my favorites. It's like a really weird, it's like a two-parter. There's Death Walks at Midnight and Death Walks in High Heels with the same leading actress. And Death Walks at Midnight is an incredible soundtrack. Incredible.
There you go.
Cool.
There you
cool.
go. All righty. Well, we thank you guys so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed. Either this is going to be 2 or 1 long episode, right? So either way, we'll see you next time.
Bye.